Well, hello and greetings. I hope you're doing well.
Hello.
I'm very glad you took the trouble to come today so we can talk and you can tell us your story. We tried very hard to convince you to come. You were worried that your identity might be revealed. But I give this guarantee to all the dear ones who want to participate in our program that all your rights will be protected. Meaning, we'll do our best so that, God willing, your identity won't be revealed under any circumstances. So please tell us, why were you reluctant to come here?
Well, because since that incident happened, no one in our family knows about it yet, and I didn't want anyone to find out about this matter. Because our relatives followed you, and also because since it was unbelievable for the family, I was afraid it would be blamed on me and somehow put me in danger.
You're saying that your relatives? Because they followed me, and they wouldn't believe it if you told them about this.
Yes, because what happened to me was caused by someone who was considered a first degree relative. And he was also known as a very pure and noble person in the eyes of others. That's why, basically, if I wanted to tell anyone, no one would believe it. That's why it's been kept a secret for several years.
In what way was he, for example, a trustworthy and reliable person?
In the family and in that town where he lives. Well, he's known for being a very good person, someone who prays, a man of God. He's known as trustworthy. By these terms, that's why I was even a bit afraid that,
I feel like you're a bit worried, bit anxious.
yes,
And I asked you to please try not to worry. And if you'd like, you don't have to tell every single part of your story. You can share the parts that might offer a lesson for the audience, where they might learn something and some truth can be revealed. If something might even reveal that person's identity and you're not comfortable with it, you can completely refrain from saying it. Of course, I'm aware of her story, but I'll follow along so that you can get the full picture of the story. So, where did the story begin?
I was about 12 years old. Every year during the holidays, we'd go to my grandfather's house. We all gathered together, and the story started there because, well, due to my young age, we played a lot with the cousins and were always together. Sometimes our parents would go to sleep while we were still awake to play and so on. Everyone was asleep, and only I and two of our relatives were left, and we wanted to go. It was settled that we'd gradually go to sleep and get ready for bed.
I have a question. Those two relatives of yours, how old were they?
Around your age,
Boy or girl?
a boy and a girl. Then, regarding what happened that night before that, well, my grandfather's bathroom is in the yard. It takes time for us to go to the bathroom, wait in line, and all that. Everyone had laid out their bedding and was asleep, even next to my mother, so there was no room for me to sleep there. When we came back from the bathroom, I wondered where to sleep, so I went to my grandfather. Where was he sleeping? We have stairs going up, and underneath, there's a small room like space connecting the kitchen to the living room. I saw him sleeping there, and there was space next to him. I thought, well, he's my grandfather, so I slept next to him with a little distance. It was the middle of the night, and I was asleep. Gradually, I realized someone was touching my body. They were stroking my head and face.
How old were you?
I was approximately 11 or 12 years old at the time.
And is your grandfather still alive now?
Yes, I felt my body being touched. At first, I thought it was just affection, like my dad was there. I didn't realize what was actually happening. Then I saw, no, it was moving down from my face to the sensitive parts of my body. I was being touched, and for a moment, well, I just froze. I didn't know who was doing it. It was dark. I opened my eyes for a second. I saw that my grandfather, who was supposed to be sleeping across from me, wasn't in his spot. I snapped out of it, turned around, and saw it was my grandfather doing these things to me. I was truly in shock at that moment and couldn't believe it. He's my grandfather, whom I love so much. Why is he doing this? What is going on here? And the moment I came to my senses and tried to pull away, he held me even tighter. And well, at that moment, it was like I couldn't even make a sound. I didn't know what to do. And out of fear that if I spoke up or raised my voice and others came and saw this, well, they might have thought that maybe I was doing something. I don't know. Because they consider that person very trustworthy in those respects. I couldn't find my voice and I didn't know what to do at that moment. I was trying to pull away, but he had me pinned. I was lying on my side and he pinned me from behind. He had pinned my arms and legs and was doing what he wanted. And well, a 12-year-old child just isn't strong enough. I really didn't know what I should do at that moment to make a sound. He even covered my mouth after that, so I couldn't even make a sound anymore.
And tell me, where did this lead? Was there an actual assault, or was it just...
Yes, the assault happened.
So he actually had full intercourse with you?
Yes, yes.
And what was your mindset? I mean, did you understand what was happening?
I was just starting to realize at that age, I was just beginning to understand these things. I can't say I fully understood, but I knew some things at that age. Well, that night when it happened, the moment he moved, I quickly got up and ran out of that room. And I was thinking, well, the first thing that comes to mind is to go tell your family or call your mom. I stopped on the stairs for a second and thought, well, who do I call now? Who would believe me if I said such a thing? I just stood there. No one was awake for me to say, oh my God, this happened. What should I do? And so on. I couldn't even go call my mom or dad because my dad was very strict. And I was really scared. Like, what if I told him and he hurt me, saying, why were you even there? It's most likely your fault that this happened, not someone else's, you know? Honestly, I couldn't really find anyone else to tell about this.
The only reason I'm interrupting you is for a specific reason. Since we're going to alter your voice, it gets a bit difficult if we talk over each other. I ask that if I ask you a question, please pause for 1 second before giving me your answer. And if you want to agree with something while I'm speaking, just nod and then speak about it once I've finished talking. Did the assault take place that May?
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
It was a bitter experience for you, and you couldn't even bring it up with your parents because this person was very trusted and reliable, and no one would have ever suspected him. Do you have a religious family?
Yes.
How many years have passed since then?
11 years have passed since that incident, and to this day, no one knows. Because when it happened, during that week we were there, it didn't just stop that night, it continued. And I was threatened with looks and behavior. For example, when we were sitting in the living room, well, my grandfather, who would come home from the fields, would sleep in the living room. And since everyone is hard of hearing, it would be like, oh, he can't hear anyway, let him sleep. And it was like that. I'd see him lying there while we were all gathered around. I'd look for a second and see him winking at me from under the blanket, and I really didn't know what to do. At that moment, I'd see others making noise, and my mom would say, be quiet, kids. I'd say, Grandpa's awake, look, he's awake. But as soon as I'd point it out, he'd close his eyes and pretend to be asleep. Well, for a 12-year-old, it was very hard to endure something like that. Whether it was what happened that night or the looks that bothered me, and I just couldn't prove it. I even tried this way, saying, Mom, look, Grandpa is looking at me and winking, but by the time I'd call my mom and she'd look, she'd see he was pretending to be asleep, or he'd act in a way so that others wouldn't realize what was happening. And, well, during that 1 week period we were there, I was going through the worst days of my life. Because this continued every day. I slept next to my mother from that night on, but I was constantly stressed that he might come over to me, that he'd try something, or if everyone else went out and I was home, he'd try to assault me again. Truly, in my eyes, he was my grandfather, and my grandfather did that to me.
I'm very sorry about what happened, but I have a few questions. You said this happened repeatedly. How did he convince you to, for example, go to him?
When it was relatively quiet, he'd use his gaze or, for example, gesture for me to come, I'd try to ignore him, but seeing it continue, I'd try to escape. To avoid it, if others were going somewhere, I'd say, I'm coming with you, just to escape the situation so that what happened before wouldn't happen again. But as I was saying, even now, 11 years later, though I haven't told anyone, when we greet each other and shake hands, I still feel a shiver inside. I'm afraid to even say hello, shake hands, or do the traditional cheek kiss.
Do you still feel those looks now or not?
I don't know. I don't look at his face. Maybe they're there and I just don't notice. But I try my best to keep my distance so I don't see him because it truly makes me feel sick.
And then in your relationships, have you faced any problems?
I haven't told anyone anything.
So, if you've been in a relationship, has it not affected your mental state?
It has. I was actually in a period of depression for a while and I attempted suicide twice. But my family just thought, oh, what's wrong? It's just her age, or it's the influence of her friends, and I couldn't say a word. What was I supposed to say? That my grandfather raped me? Would my mother have believed such a thing? Or would my father have believed that something like that happened?
So, the trauma of this event stayed with you for years, and you're still struggling with it to this day. What could have happened? What action or step do you think could have been taken so this wouldn't have happened to you?
I wouldn't have let it break me. I mean, I've tried to take my own life twice, and unfortunately, I wasn't successful. I just can't see life the same way other people my age do. It's like you've lost everything, like you left a part of yourself behind somewhere. It feels like I left my whole self behind in that place. I can't trust anyone anymore. The person who did this to me showed no mercy, and he was my own grandfather. Since it was my grandfather who did this to me, what could I possibly expect from anyone else?
Any final words?
I have nothing left to say.
Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this episode. I'm very grateful to you for sharing your story. I'm so sorry. I just hope that we can all reach a level of understanding and awareness and educate ourselves more on this path, that we simply shouldn't leave our children alone with anyone, even those we trust and rely on, because this is a strange and twisted urge that often comes from people we would never even suspect. We often see these tendencies in those we'd least expect. I mean, these people don't have any specific physical traits or obvious behavioral signs. It's something internal that exists within them, and it can just happen. Watch over your children, listen to what they say, and trust them. Be friends with your children, and don't let the distance or the wall between you and them get so high that it prevents them from speaking up if something happens, like what happened to this lady. And the wall is so high, she can't climb over it to tell her parents what's going on. Keep that wall low, or better yet, don't have any wall at all between you and your child, in hopes of awareness and that our society and the world can be free from such tragedies. Take care of yourselves. Until the next episode, goodbye. Thank you all so much. Goodbye.